Zelos Podcast is sponsored by Kinetic IQ, where intelligence meets motion. Kinetic IQ brings a biomechanics lab into the palm of your hand, letting you measure movement anytime, anywhere, with just an iPad or an iPhone, and no wearables required. I've been using Kinetic IQ's markerless motion capture in my own practice, and whether you're screening athletes, analyzing posture and gait mechanics, optimizing performance, or guiding return to play, it helps practitioners like us save time, capture more objective data, and make instant actionable decisions. So to learn more about how Kinetic IQ is shaping the future of intelligent movement, visit them at kinetikiq.com. That's KINETIKIQ.com. You know, I can't tell you how thrilled I am to have Metabolic Elite be one of the sponsors of the Zelos Podcast. You know what makes Metabolic Elite different is their commitment to real results. I've seen a lot of supplements and performance enhancement things over the years, but they pair clinical experience with innovation, like Lipitab, their proprietary solid-state liposomal delivery system. It's a chewable format which enhances absorption, like nutrients like BPC 157 and synapses. They're delivered more efficiently in the body, supporting recovery, focus, cognitive health. Their formulas go beyond the basics, solving performance health challenges at the system level. Every product is tested for quality, it's backed by research, and trusted by athletes and clinicians alike. So learn more at metabolicelite.co. And you can get 10% off all of Metabolic Elite products by entering the coupon code ZELOS, Z-E-L-O-S. Welcome to the Zelos Podcast, the show that's all about the pros behind the pros in sports. I'm your host, Rocky Snyder. Malcolm Balk is my guest this week. Not only is the author of The Art of Running, he is running coach kind of extraordinaire. Wrote a book. He works with a whole bunch of different performers as well as athletes utilizing the Alexander Technique. So we're going to dive in a little bit more and get a better understanding of what the Alexander Technique is and how he helps other individuals. Don't forget, Perform Better. It's actually coming up this weekend. Start kicks off on Thursday, goes to Saturday in Chicago, June 18th to the 20th. If you're going to be there, hey, hunt me down. I'll be doing a couple of lecture hands-on Q&A room kind of things on Saturday morning. Love to see you there. If you missed that, don't worry. July 9th to the 11th in Long Beach. I'll be over there as well. I'd love to connect and network. And then, of course, Perform Better. They've got their flagship summit in Providence, Rhode Island at the end of August. I won't be in that attendance, but at least in Chicago and Long Beach, would love to connect. And if not there, perhaps July 8th to the 11th, the NSCA's National Conference, personal trainer, professional development group. It would be something to sit in on. I'll be there with that. It'll be in New Orleans. And if you haven't registered, do that now. While we're at it, go to my website, rockysnyder.com. You can get a whole bunch of blogs, online courses, and a bunch more. Follow us on Instagram at Rocky_Snyder, SNYDER. Click the subscribe button, and let's get on with this conversation. Malcolm, first of all, man, thanks for coming and joining me for a conversation on Zelos.
Rocky, it's a pleasure. It's an honor to talk with you. You know, I always enjoy your company and your insights, and I'm happy to be here and looking forward to chatting with you about all sorts of good stuff.
How far do we go back? Because we met at an Anatomy in Motion course that Gary Ward and Chris Stratharan were putting on. And I couldn't even tell you, was it in Toronto? Where were we?
It was
Vancouver?
in Santa Cruz. It was, it
Oh,
was Santa Cruz. And obviously it was before COVID because
2016, maybe 10
yeah,
years ago?
10 years ago, boy, oh boy, yeah.
Damn.
And then we saw each other again in Santa Cruz just on the eve of COVID. In fact,
When shutdown occurred, you guys were scrambling on the phone when we came back for lunch. I remember that.
were rushing to the airport before they shut it down. In fact, I got the last plane out to New York. It's something like, you know, from an apocalyptic film or something like that. The last plane to New York.
Now, in hindsight, just for a moment, Are you kind of reticent about that because you had an opportunity of having a wonderful reason for staying on the Central Coast of California and hanging out in Surf City, but instead you chose to go to the Big Apple and maybe even drive up north to your home in Montreal.
Well,
Are you a little bit sad about that?
I think I would have ended up in a room with this very strange lady who was sort of Airbnb her back room and not being allowed out, with I don't know what the quarantine was like there, but it was, I don't know. Those were crazy times. But yeah, we first met each other when a slightly more sane moment back in 2016. And I'd heard about Anatomy in Motion through Helen Hall, who wrote a book on running called Even With Your Shoes On. And I got interested in it. It just made a lot of sense. And I went and worked with her, and she did something with me with the wedges and had me walk after she sort of got me to pronate a little bit with one of the wedges. And I felt like I was leaning, canted over to one side. And in fact, when I looked in the mirror in front of me, I was dead straight. And I went, what the heck is going on here? And that sparked an interest, which got me out there to California. And that's where we met. And you were really helpful in trying to explain, what happens when you're in sagittal plane, at this phase of the running, what happens to your shoulder joint at that point, which we were all kind of going, oh, well, yeah, sure. And, and you knew, I said, oh, thank God, there's my life preserver in the midst of this, total confusion. And then we went and visited your gym. And we did some stuff on the force plates. I remember that. And it just sparked a whole learning process for me, which is ongoing and which really supported a lot of my interest in my work, both on myself and with my pupils and the people that I coach, as runners. How does this head-neck relationship, which is what we look at a lot in the Alexander world, which is where I'm coming from, how does that fit in with what's going on in the feet, and what are the links there? And and we've managed to stay friends and I'd like to think colleagues since then, because you've helped me out more than once when I've got, I had a race coming up in 2 weeks and couldn't walk, and said, Rocky, what do I do about this? And he said, well, try this. And 2 weeks later I set a Quebec record, and I went, well, this guy, he knows what
He's the luckiest bastard in the world, is what he is. He blows smoke like there's no tomorrow, but every now and then he gets it right.
There you go. So, yeah, and I'm really glad that that we've met and we've stayed friends and colleagues over the years, and I think it's been, for me at least, quite a rich relationship. I've learned a lot chatting with you and working with you.
Well, it's been mutual, but I want it to be even more one-sided. That's why I asked you on the show. I want to learn more from you,
Okay.
and in a number of ways. One, you wrote the book, The Art of Running. You teach all over the world. I mean, gosh, you're going to Slovenia in a matter of weeks. I think you'll be in New York. I mean, you travel more than George Clooney in that movie with the million-mile kind of marker there. I'm sure you got like a gold or platinum card with some airline, but aside from that, the Alexander technique, the Alexander method, is it what, like the Alexander world, I want to learn more about that. I want to learn more about the philosophy, the approach, because it's a top-down approach. And I love, no matter where in the body you want to start, there's usually some type of philosophy or learning opportunity there, whether it's from the bottom up, the center out, or the top down. So,
Yeah.
how about this? How about just give us like a 2-minute synopsis of your career path, how you got to where you are right now, just the highlights, and then we'll dive into the art of running and Alexander.
My mom made me play the cello when I was 11 years old. I was a hockey player at heart. All my friends teased me. I quit 2 years later. At 19, when I was playing for university and I got tired of getting beat up, I quit hockey and said I want to play the cello again. But I played the cello like I was still going in the corners. And and funnily enough, when teachers said relax and then repeated it a bit louder, that didn't seem to help me with the tension I was bringing to the instrument. So my teacher at the time said, maybe you should try the Alexander technique. And she'd come across it in her career when she was in London. And I'd never heard of it. And she said, well, we're going to get a teacher to come up here and work with everybody. So why don't you have a few lessons and see what you think? So that happened. And then I read a book by Wilfred Bartle, one of Alexander's supporters and students. And he basically said that the Alexander technique, he developed the principle underlying human coordination. And I went, excuse me? I said, I've been looking for that for the last, umpteen years. As a hockey player, I was always looking like, do you skate with your back arched? Do you skate with your back straight? Do you stand up tall? Do you bend your knees? How do you do this so that it works well? I'd always been looking and interested in coordination. And then when it comes to the cello, where effort is not the answer. In hockey, if you go in the corner and you try hard, you get rewarded. But trying hard, as Alexander said, only emphasizes what you already know. And on the cello, that was not helping me. I had to learn to undo. I had to learn to use more finesse. And so I started lessons, and I've got to be honest with you, they made no sense to me whatsoever, but I had this thing in the back of my mind, the underlying principle of human coordination. And one thing led to another, and somebody said, well, look, why don't you meet the teachers that trained me, the guy who was coming up here. Why don't you meet the teacher that trained me? He's over from London, and I think you'd like him. And so I met him. In fact, he'd been a boxer at college, so he was into sports. He knew sports, and he liked them. And I met him, and he said, well, look, we've got an opening in September. This was at Christmas time when I met him. Why don't you think about coming over and becoming a teacher? Well, yeah, why not? So I quit my job, sold my furniture, left my apartment. Following September, jumped on a plane, went to England with no clue about what I was getting into, and trained as an Alexander teacher. And it took me, I figured I'd be teaching lessons within about 3 months, after starting the course. Wow, geez, was I ever disillusioned when I sat in a chair for 3 months, basically, and waited for somebody to come along and work with me. And I learned a lot. I learned how to stop. I learned how to think. I learned how to not react. I learned all the things that I hadn't. I'd always been from the school, when in doubt, get a bigger hammer,
Excellent.
Go hard or go home, the underlying philosophy of most track coaches, in Canada and the US. And this was a completely different approach. It wasn't about more doing, it was more about undoing what you're doing that's getting in the way. And it was
Give me an example, because I understand the concept, but I feel like I need something more concrete.
Well, let me give you an example. One of the things that we do a lot in the training course is you sit in a chair and a teacher comes over and puts their hands usually underneath your chin and on the back of your head and says, I'm going to stand you up and I don't want you to help me. So they start to move you, and your normal reaction is to tighten your thighs and start to push yourself out of the chair. And they go, no. Your job is just to sit in that chair, think about lengthening your spine, and leave the rest to me. I went, excuse me? I don't work that way. And then when you finally stop and stop doing what you're used to doing all the time, they suddenly go, boop, and you're out of the chair with absolutely no effort, and sometimes straight up. And you're going, how did that happen? I didn't do anything. I weigh 154 pounds. And they just, with 2 fingers, stood me straight up out of the chair. How'd they do that? How did I do that? Well, I've been trying to figure that out for the last 40 years. But When this relationship within the head, the neck, and into your spine is properly coordinated, everything gets easier. And it doesn't matter if it's standing up, or as that teacher often demonstrated with me, he would work on my head and I would play the cello and the sound would do this. And I went, wait a minute, you don't know anything about the cello and you didn't touch my bow arm. How come the sound just got better? He says, well, because you've just coordinated yourself properly and you've stopped making the wrong kind of effort. And you see that people who are in the zone, right? You see that with people who are in the zone and they say all of a sudden things move in slow motion. They don't feel like they're making any effort. Maurice Green is quoted, this famous U.S. sprinter is saying, when he takes 44 steps, he has no sense of muscle when he runs. If he takes 45 steps, it feels like he's running through thick, deep sand. Now, what the heck is the difference? And that's what, to me, the Alexanders seem to be like a window into that world of discovering effortless effort. The stuff that people talk about all the time. I'm not talking about grinding. I'm talking about when people are in the zone and all of a sudden they just hitting a golf ball 300 yards and it doesn't even feel like they're, picking up their cup of coffee, or
Okay, so what I'm going to try and put it into other words as I'm trying to interpret what you're saying here, try and push it back to you, is that by creating better positioning of the head upon the spine and a better positioning of the spine, and ultimately trying to find that central point closer in which the body can orbit around, let's say. Otherwise, we'll call it maybe alignment. Is that what we're looking for? Is it something other than, obviously there's some mechanical aspect of it, there's a neurological aspect, but like how is it explained? I would say more scientifically.
There are a couple of neuroscientists who are trying to explain it. And I think they're doing a pretty good job, but it's sort of like trying to explain, I don't know, the taste of a lemon to somebody who's never tasted one.
So qualitative is much easier than quantitative, right? I
Yeah.
totally see that. And hey, there's several things in this world that were left unanswered by science, but it doesn't mean that it doesn't work, that it's not effective. So, but
Yes.
it sounds like the scientific community hasn't really delved deeply into Alexander's technique to really quantify it.
Yeah, well, they're trying, but it's a little bit like this. I know you're a surfer, and I bet there are times when you've hit a wave, or however you explain that, and it worked in a way that you could not have imagined before it happened, and you didn't do anything consciously, and it happened.
Sure.
And
Like being in the zone, just like you say, it's like being in the zone.
Yeah, and Ken Dryden, I'm just reading this book by Ken Dryden called The Goal. Now it's the end of the hockey season. And he talks about that when he consciously tried to sort of remember, what was this guy's slap shot like, and what kind of moves did he make? He was always late. But when he just looked at the puck and let his body respond, he was early. And he would make the save. But as soon as his conscious mind got involved, he'd get it. He wasn't fast enough. The puck would be going by him. And so the Alexander technique is a conscious way to get into that zone. So you start with conscious, and maybe you think a little bit about where your head is supposed to be. But then there's something deeper that kind of takes over. It's kind of I know it sounds a little bit woo-woo here, but when things really work, it's not you that's doing them. It's kind of like it's doing them. Like those moments when you were surfing really well. You weren't doing it anymore. It was doing it. And you were just along for the ride.
Understood.
And I've been so fascinated by that. There have been times when I've run and I'm thinking, I want to run faster, but there's physically nothing I can do. I'm just running as absolutely as fast as I can. I can't do anything else. It's just happening. And it's like, oh my God, I'm just being swept along here. Now, what was that state? It's always fascinated me. And every now and again, I get glimpses about it. I can get a glimpse of that when I'm vacuuming. All of a sudden, I'm holding the vacuum, and a relationship appears where all of a sudden the handle that I'm holding and all the rest of it doesn't weigh anything. And it goes exactly where I want it to go with very little effort. And I feel really balanced and poised, and I'm breathing, and I'm aware of the whole room. I know it sounds ridiculous, but it's the same thing in sports. When people get in the zone, they have that experience of things slowing down, things seem balanced, controlled. They know what's going to happen almost before it happens. Anyway, I think the Alexander Technique, and in some ways, is a window into that world. And it's learned in a very practical way, where you'll be asked, let's say you come in and tell me, you say to me, every time I do a curl, I get neck pain. And after I inflict, my sense of humor on you and say, well, when I go to the gym, it seems like every exercise in the gym is a neck exercise. And we move on from that. What I might do is I might get you to do the curl. And then I'll sort of say, I'll come over and I'll put my hands on you and say, okay, now are you aware of what you're doing up here in order to move your arms? And then with my hands, I can actually give you an experience of, rather than contracting and shortening your spine, of your spine energizing in a lengthening kind of way. And then you curl again. And I've done this with people in the gym, and all of a sudden they say, I'm curling now the exact same weight, and it feels like half the weight. And it's taking me half the effort. But I'm getting more focus on where I actually want to be working right now. I don't feel like the focus is maybe in my shoulders or my legs. I'm now feeling it exactly where I want to be focusing it. So the Alexander Technique can be applied really practically to any kind of activity. And I can work with people in activity, which I do often.
Well, it seems like the Alexander Technique, I won't say originated, but became quite popular with performers, entertainers, musicians, orchestra musicians. And because for the people that I know that surround you and learn from you, many obviously can be cellists, but singers and the people that come into my facility, when I find out they have been practicing the Alexander Technique, they are typically vocalists or musicians, and sometimes public speakers, anybody that's on stage. And so I'm fascinated by you as a running coach and how you transition this into athleticism. How does the Alexander Technique overflow? I mean, in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, this is a hands-on approach from the top down that helps reinforce centration in the body so that we get somewhere in that middle ground between sympathetic, parasympathetic response. Like, that's where my head is trying to explain it, of course. Instead of I've been in Santa Cruz a long time. We can spin the crystals and burn the incense and all that foo-foo stuff like you say. But honestly, I'm just trying to go, okay, there's a way to quantify this, a way to understand it. And so that's where my head goes. But I'm curious, like with your students for running, you've worked with some really accomplished track and field athletes of all ages, by the way, not just Olympians, but the seniors and the masters division and so on. Like, where does the Alexander Technique fit in the world of athletes and strength conditioning?
Well, I think even the best athletes in the world have better days and not so great days, right? I mean,
sure. We're plastic beings. Yeah. We're always, in a state of flux, shall we say.
Golf is a great example of that. One day you're shooting 63 and the next day you can't make the cut, I always, tell people, you can see my nose way better than I can see it myself. So, and this is, this as a coach, and you can they come in and they say, I just can't figure out why isn't this working today? And you have a look at them and you sort of say, well, let's try this, or let me see what you're doing. Sometimes I'll just put my hands on them and I say, go ahead and do that. And I can feel where they're interfering. And I may know that before they do. So
when you say interfering, do you mean like a compensatory reflex almost, like there's some restriction here or there? Is that what you
yeah,
mean?
yeah, they're getting in the way.
Got it.
Somehow they're getting in the way. So a lot of times, like athletes will make a preparatory sort of tension, create a preparatory tension state in themselves, which is sometimes is useful and sometimes it's not necessary, and many times it becomes unconscious. And my job is to sort of say, okay, look, are you aware right now when you're getting ready to take a step that you're holding your breath? And they go, I never noticed. I was just thinking about where I was going, which gets to the philosophy of the technique, which is what Alexander called a non-end gaining philosophy, which basically means you need to pay attention to the process. If you over-focus on the goal, you may skip some steps. And so for example, a thing that I've been working with runners lately, and I was talking to our friend JP Gloria about this, who is, we were talking a little bit about the time that a runner spends on the ground, okay?
Yeah.
And it's for a middle distance runner, it's somewhere around 0.2 of a second. We're not talking a very long time here, folks. 0.2 of a second. And in that time, that runner has got to land on the ground, absorb the shock of the landing, create a little bit of elastic recoil, and then propel themselves to the next step in 0.2 of a second. If they skip that first step and they don't do it very well, the gathering of energy, the stretch shortening reflex, which they want to get, which they want to really get working for them, so they've got more, bounce in their stride, it doesn't happen as well because they don't give it enough time, and therefore they have to muscle themselves, over the ground, as opposed to, let's say, springing. I'll use that. It's not a very technical term, but any runner will know when they're running well and they've got that nice springy step, as opposed to when they're muscling it. And for runners out there, just remember what your last, 200 meters of the marathon felt like. How springy was that? So, and a lot of runners run like that a lot of the time. So my job, if I, is to sort of say, okay, how can I make that runner more aware of the steps that they might be skipping? So what I first do is I try to make them aware, first of all, that they've got a spine and a head on top of the spine, and their neck, if it's too tight or too lax, is not going to have the heads poised on top of the spine like we'd really like to see it. So I help them balance all that and get that working a little bit, and that will affect their awareness of everything else that happens. So it's like that opens the window, and now we can start to see some things going on. And then I sort of say, all right, let's play a little bit with your landing. Let's just see how well you can absorb the shock of the landing. And there are lots of techniques out there for that. The one I've been using lately is have somebody stand on a short step off the step, and then just take the full weight of their body on the landing leg and see what happens. And what I'm looking for there, and you'd love this, and we were looking at a video there of Sebastian Sawe the other day, I want to see their foot pronate. And I want to see their knee stay fairly stiff. And I want to see their hip stay fairly stiff. If I see a lot of stiffness in their foot, and a lot of knee bend, and a lot of hip bend, I'm going, oh, now we've got some interesting things to work on. So
sure,
I'll work on that with them for a while. So to say, okay, let's say that they need to pronate. Well, I might get out the wedge, and I'll put the wedge under their foot and get them the feeling of the pronation. I might get them to stiffen up their knees with a little bit of pogoing and not bending the knees very much. I might get them to exaggerate hip bend and then not exaggerate it. There's different ways into all of this. And they get to the point where they can land and with a nice soft splatty foot, a fairly toned knee and a fairly toned hip without scrunching their neck down. Can they keep that nice direction going up here while all the rest of that is happening? Because funny enough, that's what we see with a lot of great runners. We see this poise of the head up here. We may see some movement a little bit like this, but that's all within plane. That's not a big deal. But we generally see a lengthening tendency in the body, and we see that splatty kind of thing going on in the feet, and we see fairly stiff knees and fairly stiff hips, on the landing with the absorption phase. So I'd like to I get in there and then I help them, I bring them back to themselves so that, if they start to really look down and at their feet, what are their feet doing? And they start to get the neck being a bit droopy and maybe the head compressing the spine a little bit. Say, well, let's not forget what's going on up here, bring them back up there and gently practice that till they get this really nice overall feeling of what absorbing the landing should feel like. And that's how I would take, my knowledge and my, interest as a runner, as a coach, and as an Alexander teacher, and kind of blend them together and sort of give, I think, a runner a very different experience than, run straight, turn left, and do it a little bit faster this time.
We're just going to take a quick pause from this conversation to acknowledge our sponsors, and then we'll be right back. The Zelos Podcast is sponsored by Kinetic IQ, where intelligence meets motion. Kinetic IQ brings a biomechanics lab into the palm of your hand, letting you measure movement anytime, anywhere with just an iPad or iPhone. No wearables required. I've been using Kinetic IQ in my own practice, and whether you're screening athletes, optimizing performance, or guiding return to play, it helps practitioners like us save time, capture more objective data, and make instant actionable decisions. So to learn more about how Kinetic IQ is shaping the future of intelligent movement, visit kinetikiq.com. That's KINETIKIQ.com. At the forefront of metabolic elite is Jim Lavelle, internationally recognized clinical pharmacist, a chief science officer at Lifetime, and the co-chair for the American Academy of Anti-Aging Medicine. He's got over 4 decades of experience and has guided Olympic athletes, professional teams, and leading health institutions. You know what makes Metabolic Elite different is their commitment to real results. Like Lipitab, their proprietary solid-state liposomal delivery system. It's a chewable format which enhances absorption like nutrients like BPC 157 and synapses. They're delivered more efficiently in the body, supporting recovery, focus, cognitive health. Their formulas go beyond the basics, solving performance health challenges at the system level. Every product is tested for quality, it's backed by research, it's trusted by athletes and clinicians alike. And you can get 10% off all of Metabolic Elite products by entering the coupon code ZELOS, ZELOS.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about Sebastian, and we did have that conversation earlier in the week or last week, and I was truly blown away when you start looking at his gait mechanics as he is blowing away, honestly, the 2-hour marathon mark. And I must admit, I mean, who was the second person that broke the 4-minute mile? We know Roger Bannister was the first one. Who's the second person?
I think
Exactly.
Okay, well,
The point being is, I know there were 2 guys that broke the 2-hour barrier, Sebastian Sawe and then the guy behind him. But you'll know what's his name?
Kachelcha.
Kachelcha. Okay, I will never remember his name, and I'm sorry to him for that. But I will remember Sebastian, just like Roger Bannister.
Absolutely.
Unbelievable. Yeah. Unbelievable. Was it a 4:16 mile for 26.2 miles? Something ridiculous like that. I mean, unbelievable. But the point being, what was it?
I think it's around 4:30.
4:30, 4.5 minute mile for 26.2 miles. Yeah. I don't know if how many people could even do a 4:30 period one time, but to do
No,
it consecutively.
nobody. No, this is unbelievable. And you know, they've done this before where they put people on a treadmill. This is when before Sawe came along, and it was now I'm going mind blanking here. You know, who's the former world record holder? You're very nice guy. Anyway, they put people on a treadmill at his pace, which was around 69 seconds a quarter. You know, and they'd say, let's see if you can.
Kipchoge is who you're thinking of.
There we go. Thank you. And they'd say, let's see if you can run a quarter mile at that pace. And you get guys up there, and boom, within 400 meters, within 2 minutes, they're off.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
And then side note, of course, the fellow that finished second, who already you told me his name, and I can't recall it. Kachelka.
Yeah.
Kachelka. That was his very first marathon.
Yes, it's his first marathon, and I think he's going to be the one who will break the current record. I think he'll beat Sawe eventually.
I mean, if your first marathon is under 2 hours,
It's
what the fire? I mean, that is so amazing. But here's the thing. The reason why I'm bringing it up is because our conversation, we were looking at the running form and how much pronation the foot ankle complex went into. And this is the fastest marathoner to date in human history. So for all of those going pronation, you don't want to teach pronation. You don't want to have somebody go into pronation. There is a prime reason why that phrase might want to be reworded.
lawyers call that bad facts.
Bad facts, fake news, however you want to say it, proven wrong. That is just, it was sensational. And I'm sure I'll follow JP Gloria's posts with his Instagram, and I'll copy the same thing. Like, okay, and you're saying pronation's a bad thing? I mean, I think by now the majority of people are realizing we need to load the tissue in order to explode. But that, in essence, was something that just, you want to put a nail in a coffin? Oh my gosh, that was insane.
Yeah, it was fantastic. And the thing that, you know, at one point I thought, and I realize now, you know, some things I'm such a slow learner, but you know, when you look at great runners, you see all kinds of form. You do see that absorption phase for most runners. But one of the things that I've seen more and more is that there are many variations on the theme. But as human beings, and this is where I think Alexander got it right, is what is the coordinating mechanism for all these variations on the theme? And that's what I think he was getting at. And that's what I think we try to help people discover for themselves. We're not teaching them anything new. Civilization, phones, sitting, lifestyles, all sorts of things gets in the way of that. And our job, I think, is to help people discover that mechanism for themselves and then apply it, you know, where they want to, be it with the violin or the cello or running or, you know, just how you walk around carrying your groceries or something like that. There is a mechanism there which is available to us, and it's not by doing more. But it's not always, it takes some work to find, and it takes a bit of work to continuously not interfere with it. And I have to say, I've been teaching now for 40 years, and one thing I know is that all that I've got better at in 40 years is not that I have this fantastic balance and posture and coordination. I just notice a little sooner when I'm going wrong.
Yes.
Because I'm going wrong all the time. And all I like to think of is I can catch it a little bit sooner and then make a different decision at that point. You know, you see a lot of things on YouTube about bulletproof this and bulletproof that, like human beings are machines and you can just, you know, tune them up and then they can just run for the next 50 years. And everything is, everything will just stay exactly the same. Well, this is crazy. We change every day, from the cellular level on out. And I think what Alexander discovered is a tool for living, to help us develop our skill in living. And he did it in a very practical way. He was not a deductive thinker. He was an inductive thinker. He looked at what he saw in the mirror when he was trying to when he's trying to rid of himself of this voice problem that he had as an actor. He would go hoarse on stage, and nobody could tell him why this was happening. They just tell him to rest. And he looked in the mirror and he studied himself, and he figured there must be something I'm doing to myself that's causing that problem. What is it? And he figured it out. And for him, the reason why we talk a lot about the head neck is he tried to cure his voice problem starting in different places. And the one thing that seemed to make a difference is this balance of the head on top of the spine and what his spine was doing. When he could get that working better, his voice improved, and other things did as well. And it was like, oh, if I start with that one, that's the first domino. Other things will, seem to improve as a result. And that was his discovery. That was his gift that we try to share with people and help them discover for themselves and give them tools so they can work on it a little bit themselves and see how it enhances their life.
No, I love it. I love the fact that there are so many methodologies, techniques, frameworks, and I can't say that any of them are the perfect end all be all solution to every problem, but I sure do like to collect tools and the understanding behind the methodology and techniques and framework and so on, so that there's more resources available. Because you yourself, I mean, there's the Alexander Technique and your skilled learning with anatomy of motion and gait mechanics, but put on top of that the art of running and the coaching. I mean, you've got tremendous amounts of tools where now the master coach, the master teacher, however you'd like to see it, the master professional is the one that more often than not can choose the proper tools at any given time for the proper individual, right?
It's all about that connection. It's all about that connection. And, I'll be the first to say that, I don't have the answer to every problem. There's some people who can do some things way better than I can. But I feel like I have a lot to offer, given my interest and my background and my training. And I do, as we all do, we do what we can. And if there's a fit, if there's a good fit there, and I'm the right person for them, it can make a difference. The one thing, though, I can say about the Alexander Technique, though, is that unlike many professions, anybody who comes for a session with me leaves better than when they arrive. And you
Well,
can't
that should say enough.
you can't say that for every profession in the world, but I can tell you that in anybody who comes for a lesson with me leaves better than when they arrived. They will be moving better. They will be they'll be feeling better, generally speaking. They will have less pain. They will be in better humor, and they will have some things that they can take away and work on themselves. I'll stand by that. We may not always have, like, you often see on YouTube and that, the magic pop, the perfect hack. You just do this and you'll be famous by Friday. The Alexander Technique is a disciplined approach. It takes time, and it's, we're really working for the long term. It's not generally speaking, it's not a quick fix. But whenever it's applied, there's improvement. And
Right on.
And I love that. I love that. And I, I don't know what my life would be like, had I not just, if my cello teacher, Hélène, had not suggested that. It's sort of taken me on a path I never could have predicted. And a very interesting one. As you say, I travel. I've met all sorts of people that, I never would have met otherwise. And I feel that whoever I work with, I help, which is maybe that's a small thing, but to me, it's important to feel like whenever I work with somebody, I leave them a little better than 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 before we started. So,
Heck yeah.
yeah.
Okay, so let's bring our attention a little bit to running to kind of bring us near the end here. Although we got several minutes left. You've worked with runners ranging from beginners to elite competitors. What would you say are the most common movement habits that limit performance and contribute to a higher likelihood of injury?
Well, it depends on your level. If you're an elite athlete, you've probably got pretty good mechanics.
Okay.
The top guys, the top marathon runners are running 150, up to 180 miles per week. You can't do that on bad mechanics. I'm sorry. No matter how
Well said.
strong your
Okay.
attendants are, 180 miles a week after week,
So mechanics are kind of self-limiting then in that regard.
yeah. Basically, these are not normal human beings. When you're looking at the very top, they I think Sawe was saying that he jogs at his jogging pace is you know substantially under 6 minutes a mile.
Oh, well, we got that in common, I guess.
Yeah, you know what I mean? So, I say, folks, really go out and run 1 mile at 6 minutes, and he will jog 25 mile or 25 kilometers. What is that? 15 miles or so. He'll jog that, on his recovery days.
Oh
Okay.
my
So,
gosh.
so we're talking about, okay, so your average runner, I think of sort of, you've got elite runners and you've got recreational runners, and then you've got sort of competitive runners sort of in the middle there. And I think a lot of what happens with recreational runners and semi-competitive runners, there are two things. First of all, there's their lifestyle that's working against them. So you run like you sit. And if you sit slouched with your head pulled back and your ribs collapse and your back, your spine sort of, your back muscles sort of just in, complete lax, you're going to bring that to the track or to the road in some way. Either you're going to over stiffen to compensate, or you're not going to have enough tone in you when you run. And what you do up in the top half is going to affect what happens down, below the waist. So that's the main thing that, from an Alexander perspective, I say, look, if you can improve the way that you organize yourself in your day-to-day life, you will bring that to your running. And it's not a quick fix, but it's one of those things that if you worked at it for 3 months, you'd be a better runner.
Okay. Along that line now, I think it's time for some rapid fire questions. So
Let's
you're going
go.
to keep
All right, here we
the
go.
running coach's hat on. And if you want to keep the Alexander's hat on too,
Okay.
we'll see how they blend. But are you ready for 10 rapid fire questions?
Yep.
Barefoot running, game changer or overhyped?
Both.
Oh, you. Okay, we're not going to do that anymore. No boths anymore. You're going to have to choose one or the other. Okay, how about this? Cadence or stride length?
I'll say cadence.
Okay, the most underrated running cue.
Think up.
Ooh, treadmill or outdoor running?
Outdoor
And
running.
you're in Montreal, so
Minus
ugh,
50, we're out there.
outside. One thing runners think they need, but really don't.
More speed.
Ooh, the most common cause of running injuries.
More speed. Too much speed.
Marathon or 5K, baby?
For me, 5K.
Strength training or mobility work, which gets neglected more?
Strength training.
And one habit every runner should start tomorrow.
Run slower.
And then lastly, last one, you're doing great. One word that defines great running.
Flow.
Man, I like your answers, except for the first one when you said both, but that's okay. We can circle around on our own time and talk about that. But dude, this was great. I really appreciate your time. Tell you what, The Art of Running, your book, and for that matter, your newsletter and your courses and the Alexander Technique. Like, how do people find out where Malcolm Balk is going to be next and how to get their hands on some of your work?
If they go to my website, The Art of Running, if you just go to Art of Running, you're going to get nice pictures of runners. So it's theartofrunning.com. And if I've got it up to date, you know where I am and where to get the book online at Amazon. It's an ebook now, and you can always get in touch with me through the website or my name, Malcolm Balk, at gmail.com. And I'd be very happy to chat with you and work with you if you're interested.
Is there a period in between Malcolm and Balk for your email?
There could be, but theoretically there is, but it works even if you don't put it in.
Oh, all right. Good to know. Oh, fantastic. I'll make sure we get those links in the description below for listening audience to check out more about the Alexander Technique and your running coaching and all that. So where are you off to now? Where are you heading?
I'm going to New York in about 10 days' time to work for the annual general meeting of the American Alexander Society. I'm going to teach a workshop there. And see a few friends and colleagues, and then in the beginning of July, I'm going to Slovenia. First time I've been to Slovenia, and I'm going to be doing some courses there, and also a certification course for instructors of the who want to become Art of Running instructors. I'm going to be doing a 6-day instructor certification course at this Congress as well. So I'm going to be pretty busy. Yeah.
Love it. Love it. Oh, well, if I could be a fly on the wall, I would. I've got some travel plans of my own, but until we talk again or meet in person, I can't wait for that. And again, thanks for coming on the podcast and sharing everything you just did.
Rocky, it's been a pleasure. Always a pleasure. Thanks, my friend.
Well, that's the end of this conversation for the week. I hope you enjoyed it, and as well as Malcolm and all the information that he shared. Don't forget about the Perform Better 3-Day Summit, Chicago this week, Long Beach, July 9th to the 11th, Providence, Rhode Island, August 20th to the 22nd. Also in July, from the 8th to the 11th, is the NSCA's National Conference in New Orleans, and that's really about it. Check out my website, hit that subscribe button, tell a few friends, and we'll just take one more listen to our amazing sponsors. Have a great week. Remember to check out metabolicelite.co. Check out all the products they have on their website. Synapsin Pro is something I've been using to help stay focused without having to over-caffeinate myself. It keeps me in the zone so I can just really hone in on the things I need to achieve without feeling like, man, I got to reach for an energy drink every 5 minutes. Metabolicelite.co. And don't forget, Kinetic IQ. They've got markerless motion capture for morons like me. I can use their product with my iPhone or my iPad. I can look at posture analysis, movement analysis of any exercise, gait analysis. It gives me everything I could possibly want when tracking people's movements. So, check out kinetikiq.com.